Children, they're a lot like adults, only smaller and younger, and like adults, they can be downright creepy. There's a special level of creepy, however, accessible to children in video games, and we're not even talking about your infant antichrists or your Alma Wades. No, we're talking about the accidentally terrifying kid characters whose unintentionally eerie voice acting and dead eyes take us on a trip to the uncanny valley, saying things like, la la la. Yep, that'll do it. Please prepare yourself for the 7 accidentally terrifying children that haunt our every waking hour, and beware spoilers for the following.
For a child-friendly Nintendo adventure series, Zelda games sure are full of a lot of brain-melting terror. From the twisted Cronenbergian horror that is the Cursed Rich Man, to the nightmare-inducing Happy Mask Salesman, to, oh yeah, basically the entirety of Majora's Mask. Fun for the whole family. With its predilection for creep, it's no surprise that the Zelda series includes several creepy kids that we'd rather spend as little time around as possible, but for our rupees, the creepiest of them all has to be the Kokiri girl known as Fado. Fado can be found in the Lost Woods. You'll have to encounter her if you want to complete the side quest that gets you the Biggoron sword, so called because it's much bigger than Link. Earlier in this questline, a weird shirtless man called Grog gives you a mushroom and asks you to deliver it to an old woman at a potion shop. Instead of politely declining and then calmly calling the police, as would be sensible, you can do what he asks, at which point you're given a strange potion to take back to Grog. When you return, however, you'll find that Grog is gone, replaced by this terrifying little girl. She tells you that Grog isn't here anymore, that anyone who comes into the forest will become lost, and that everyone will become a Stalfos. Just a reminder here that in Zelda, a Stalfos is a skeleton. Now, I'm no detective, but if I left someone in the woods and returned later to find that they were gone and someone else was in their place, explaining that the missing person had become a skeleton, I'd probably be able to draw some pretty accurate conclusions fairly quickly. Also, did I mention she has a saw? Am I going to be what? A skeleton? Is that a threat? I'm not getting out of these woods alive, am I?
I'm coming to you to help her get better. Are we clear on that?
Of course, Lana. I'm with you. When you get to the hospital, go through the parking garage. The badges I gave you work anywhere.
You'd expect the creepiest thing in a horror game to be one of the, actual horrors. And 2012 survival horror game Amy isn't short of actual horrors. For a start, there's the shambling zombies that have swamped Silver City. Then there are the faceless military goons sent in to clean the mess up, who shoot first and ask questions never.
Roger. Targeting.
Then there's the frame rate, the graphics, and the voice acting.
Amy! Amy, come here.
I'll be damned, there really was a little girl. You must be Amy.
It's okay. It's okay. It's over now. One thing that's not supposed to be creepy is Amy herself, the child with psychic powers who you're supposed to be rescuing from the clutches of the dastardly Phoenix Corporation. The whole point of Amy is that although she has psychic powers, she isn't supposed to be your average creepy horror child. Instead, the whole game is about looking after her through increasingly dangerous situations, and she's supposed to be a vulnerable little girl that you feel protective over rather than afraid of. But no one told this to the people making her 3D model, who decided to give her cold dead eyes in gloomy sunken sockets.
Now how are you, little princess? Have you been good? Because the big red sleigh driver's coming tonight.
Who let a White Walker in here? Accidentally making the titular child terrifying instead of adorable is just one of the many missteps in this uninspiring, clunky, 2-hour-long survival horror game. A game that ended on a cliffhanger and, believe it or not, was originally intended to be just the first part of a full episodic series.
But somehow I knew it wasn't over.
Funny, because everyone who played it knew that it definitely was over.
You're the Inquisitor.
In Dragon Age Inquisition, Kieran is a small boy you may or may not find chilling out and being chilling in your Inquisition fortress.
Mother never told me the Inquisitor was a mage.
Ah! Kieran has the eyes of a serial killer, the bling of a figure skater, and the voice of a porcelain baby doll inhabited by the ghost of a Victorian bride.
Mother!
Ah! Kieran, it transpires, is the offspring of lightly clothed Witch of the Wilds, Morrigan.
Are you bothering the Inquisitor?
Of course not. Did you see what's on her hand, Mother?
Kieran may or may not exist in the timeline of your game. It all depends whether in the earlier game, Dragon Age Origins, Morrigan did or did not perform a sex ritual to capture the soul of an old god in an unborn baby.
What I propose is this. Lay with me, here tonight, and from our joining, a child will be conceived.
Seems chill. So Kieran is the spooky housing unit for the soul of an old god, and now he's hanging out right near where you sleep. Or rather, he's hanging out right near where you used to sleep, and now where you lie awake all night listening for his voice.
No, it would be worse. If you couldn't touch magic at all. Like being blind.
Oh god, you're going to blind me, aren't you?
A framing device is a literary technique in which the narrative is surrounded by a second narrative, as in such classic works of fiction as Frankenstein, The Canterbury Tales, or Iron Man 3. When used correctly, the framing device can help us to understand the main story better, or provide a different, interesting story of its own that intertwines with the rest of the narrative. This is not the case in The Testament of Sherlock Holmes. That's because The Testament of Sherlock Holmes features a framing device that involves 3 of the creepiest children ever seen outside of a Japanese horror film. The idea is that these kids are exploring an old attic and stumble across an unpublished volume of Dr. Watson's diaries, in which is written the events that take place within the game. In practice, however, what this means is that people who bought a Sherlock Holmes game looking forward to some highbrow Victorian sleuthing are instead greeted with this harrowing nightmare sequence that looks like something from a horror film with a name like Malevolence or Perfidious. You know the ones, bottom row of the horror category on Netflix. These terrifying children sit cross-legged around a disfigured doll reading from an old book untouched for a century, a sequence of events that you'd think can only end with them summoning a demon, but which actually kicks off the game's events.
And so I decided to pick up my pen to relate the most disturbing episode of my life thus far.
Bad enough, you'd think, but at least we're done and can carry on with our Sherlock Holmes game. Wrong, because the game repeatedly checks back in with the kids just to see if these creepy doll-eyed infants are still saying unnatural things in an attic.
Wow, this is a real adventure! It's exciting. I like it better than made-up stories.
Yep, still going. The weirdest thing about this is that Sherlock Holmes already has a framing device in the fact that it's all taken from Dr. Watson's diaries, meaning that the kids in the attic reading said diary are now a 3rd level removed from the actual events. How far does this thing go? Are we going to pull out at the end and reveal that these kids only exist in the mind of Jack the Ripper or something? Because honestly, that would actually make this whole thing make sense.
The Oracle's seen the child, just like I did. He'll be here to find her any minute now. I've got to get to her before he does. Wait for me here. I won't be long.
Fahrenheit, or Indigo Prophecy as it was known in the States, is the game that David Cage made before Heavy Rain, and, to be honest, there's a lot to unpack. The world's been subjected to a mystical new ice age, your player character is a murderer on the run who's been resurrected after he died falling off a roller coaster track, and there's a grandma who transforms into the internet. Who says old people struggle with technology? The main thing you need to know though is that there's a girl called the Indigo Child who, according to the Indigo Prophecy, can confer ultimate power to a person by whispering a secret phrase in their ear. As you might imagine, various competing groups are attempting to find her.
The child will have the answer to all questions. And the one who hears her message will have access to infinite power.
I'd go into more detail, but do you have 6 hours? Because I certainly don't. And do you think the Indigo Child will look like a normal, happy-go-lucky kid? 10 points to you if you answered no, she looks like she just got back from auditions for a remake of The Shining. Wednesday Addams called. She wants her entire wardrobe back. Jade, as the Indigo child is called, remains entirely mute throughout. Even when she's waiting for lead character Lucas to finish an embarrassing Matrix slap fight, she has the same vacant, creepy expression. Whereas I couldn't keep a straight face when I played it. Sorry, excuse me. The only slight problem with the whole Indigo prophecy deal is that 8-year-old Jade has to die to fulfill it. So at the end of the game, you'd have thought Lucas might take a moment to consider whether all of this is really necessary. Instead though, he drops that child right on the swirling mystical altar thing, receives the words of ultimate power, and then makes out with his girlfriend next to Jade's presumably still warm corpse. Alright, scratch all this, we've got a new winner for creepiest character in Fahrenheit. It's Lucas.
Is the villager from Animal Crossing really a child? Or is he an ageless, nameless, pitiless entity from outside of time, hiding among us, posing as a human boy? I mean, sure, the villager has the stature and proportions and fashion sense of a boy child, but would a child live all alone, pay off his mortgage, and become mayor? We haven't accomplished any of that, and we haven't been children for... it doesn't matter years. At any rate, in the guise of a normal human child, but with a fixed expression and sinister, unblinking gaze, the villager enters the Super Smash Bros. Ultimate Tournament. Because we assume he craves the ritual of battle and spectacle of violence, he just can't get at home in the Animal Crossing village. It's here where the villager's mask slips and we glimpse his true self. And it turns out the villager's true self is brutally handy with an axe, like a tiny Jack Nicholson off of The Shining. So this is what he was practicing for on all those trees. And for his final smash, the little axe murderer will summon 3 raccoons, the spookiest of all mammals with their creepy little hands, to brick you up alive inside a house, literally entombing you in your dream home. Oh great! Now I'm dead and I owe these raccoons 800,000 bells.
Undertale is in my top 3 games ever to feature a talking skeleton who plays the trombone. Feel free to put that on the box. Jazz skeletons notwithstanding, Undertale is a fantastic game that constantly plays with and subverts the various tropes that always surface in RPGs, including boss fights, puzzles, and having an interesting and likeable protagonist. The playable character in Undertale is named Frisk, a human child who falls into the underground in which the game is set. Frisk then sets out on their quest to leave the underground and can either choose a path of peace and pacifism, or of total genocide depending on your choices as the player. Regardless of which route you choose, Frisk's appearance remains the same: detached, creepy, and bone-chillingly blank. It's a monumental artistic achievement to pack so much menace into such a small sprite, but to our eyes at least, Frisk is pretty darn terrifying. It seems the idea was to make Frisk's appearance as blank as possible so that players could project whatever emotions they wanted onto them, but really, looking at Frisk, the optional genocide run starts to look a lot more in character. Throughout the game, it looks as though Frisk is talking to people, but we don't get to see what Frisk says. And even when playing a true pacifist route, we can't shake the feeling that there's something unsettling going on behind those cold, dead eyes, which are somehow colder and deader than a literal skeleton's eyes. Explain that, science.
The whole point of Amy is that although she has psychic powers, she isn't supposed to be your average creepy horror child.
Did everyone see that?
Yeah. Amy!
Oh, kids, scary, aren't they? And in video games.
Yeah.
very scary. Who's up for more scares? Is it you? If so, may I please recommend to you this video about the horror movie villains that were way more killable in games, so maybe that'll kind of undercut the scariness of them a little bit. Or if you're after something completely different, how about this video from Outside Extra, which is all about the weirdest button prompts that ever prompted you to press a button to do something weird. Thanks for watching, press the like button, subscribe, and hit the bell